Okay, so what about this guy? Wasn't King Leopold like a real? I mean, my conception, he's a real, just a true nasty son of a bitch. He used to like chop
No,
off.
no, all wrong. In fact, I have an article. One of the chapters is called "In Defense of Leopold's Congo." So most people's understanding of the Congo Free State, which was before the Belgian takeover of that, so this was a private colony rather than a Belgian colony, comes from Adam Hochschild's book "King Leopold's Ghost," which I've shown is a vast fabrication. There was no
Sorry to interrupt you.
depopulation.
I have to tell you this. The way where I got that from is my kid, my son. I'm not gonna say his name. Brought home papers in his senior year from that book, and that's where I read it, and that's where I got that. So he got that in the schools.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just wanted.
So Hochschild had an incredibly deleterious impact on our understanding of the Congo Free State with his book King Leopold's Ghost, 1998. So the way so here's the facts about the Congo Free State is it was an ungoverned and ungovernable part of Africa that none of the colonial powers could enter because the mortality rates were about 20% per year for a European there because of disease and climate. Slave trading and intertribal warfare was rampant. Even the British could not stop the slave trading in the central Congo. Those slaves were taken to Eastern Africa and on to the Arab area. So this is the East African slave trade run by the Arabs and the Indians. And King Leopold said, let me try to establish at least some trading stations and some navigable rivers there. That was the deal, okay? Now, King Leopold's Congo managed to create a railway up into the central part of the country and certain amount of stability by stopping slave trading and intertribal warfare with a very thin amount of people, very few, right? Still vastly unexplored. And as a result of that, population probably slightly increased. Maybe there was a decrease because of the rise of sleeping sickness and some endemic diseases that were coming in. But basically, it was an amazingly positive contribution to the people of the Congo. Now, in a very small part, about 10% of that territory, they grew rubber. And instead of forced labor requirements, they imposed rubber quotas. So, when you're running a government, you need to pay for the government. There's 3 ways to do it. You can tax people, but if they have no money, taxation is not feasible. The most common way to use it then is forced labor, right? It's called corvée labor. You pay your taxes in terms of labor. In the rubber areas, the labor was demanded in terms of the delivery of rubber quotas from different villages. Now, in most of these areas, the rubber came very easily. In other parts of these rubber areas, the local militias, who were hired by the Belgian rubber companies, engaged in coercive practices to get the locals to bring in the rubber. And there were some atrocities, for sure. I estimate maybe 10,000 Belgian black Congolese died in skirmishes or conflicts between the Belgian rubber companies. Now, don't forget, these are black militias, but it's black on black conflict. But nonetheless, the rubber companies, and the locals, 10,000. Terrible number, but don't forget, we're talking about a country of 10 million. At this point, okay? And that is the worst of it. All those pictures you see of severed limbs are either fake, meaning those are people who had their hands cut off because of gangrene or because they had their hands cut off in battles, or when you see them holding the hands of people, that's because it was tribal custom in Congo when you were issued a rifle with 10 bullets. If you came back with only 8 bullets, you needed to show that those 2 bullets had been used to kill others, and you would cut their hands off, and the hands had showed, and this was typically soldier on soldier conflict, not against villagers who didn't turn in their rubber quotas. So the British Congo reformers realized that if they could show some pictures of people with severed hands and say this is King Leopold's rubber minions, that it would spark outrage, because what they really wanted is the Brits to colonize the Congo. And it did create a movement in support of this, but a vast amount of lies and propaganda, which Adam Hochschild repeats in his book, says that 10 million people died from the Belgian Congolese, not the Belgian, King Leopold's Congolese rubber operations. Complete nonsense.
And how do we know that figure is wrong?
because demographers in the 70s, 80s, and 90s started to go back and do the data calculations.
1970s, 80s, and 90s.
Yeah, mainly the 80s and 90s is when they finally got good enough evidence and demographers estimating population. It shows the population is basically flat the whole time because despite the downward pressure on population caused by endemic disease, King Leopold's Congo was maintaining stability. Food supplies were rising, slave operations were declining. So his contribution was very positive. There was a negative countervailing effect from endemic disease, which was coming in, and the net result was basically a flat population.
Well, okay, that's fascinating because that totally upends.
Totally different. I mean, and if you try to go on Wikipedia and correct,
Well, Wikipedia is a corrupt.
yeah, if you try and correct any of those fake facts on Wikipedia, you'll get immediately edited out.
Well,
which I don't do
yeah.
because I know it's going to happen. But friends of mine who do this say that they keep trying to indicate.
Okay, no, so that's another. The corruption of Wikipedia is another story. That's a totally. I don't want to go down that road. Wikipedia is corrupt. Okay, so.
But just imagine how pernicious a myth that is because it often gets raised in this debate, right? Well, what about the Congo?
Yeah.
Wasn't the Congo terrible?
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, no, it wasn't actually. It was amazingly positive. Black Lives Mattered to King Leopold, and he did an amazing thing to support them. And yet, and just imagine how pernicious. Now, I caught Adam Hochschild actually doctoring a quotation in his book, and he recognized he had doctored it, and he apologized and said, "Well,
that's good."
I said, "I hope it gets." He said, "I hope it gets corrected." Basically, he'd taken.
That's a good attitude.
Yeah, but I mean. So it's just like I said A was not A, and I'm sorry about that, but it anchored my whole tale. Maybe he should cancel the book or give a speech. He basically took a Belgian official who said, I don't think we should be going in and forcing coercive rubber harvesting because otherwise we'll just be like the Arabs who would cut off hands and feet. He doctored that quotation to say, if we're going to do rubber harvesting, we're going to have to be cutting off hands and feet.
Oh, wow, that's significant.
Big. So completely inverted the meeting, right?
Yeah.
And that's how his book operates, in my view, and it's a complete farce.